Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
What have you been up to?
Not a great deal wildlife-wise. However, I've been about a little bit. Over the weekend, certainly. We went down to Paynton Zoo.
Nice.
So got to see a number of
Did you
of
see their
animals there.
kiwi?
I didn't see the kiwi, and I
Yeah.
didn't see the echidna either.
Ah,
Totally didn't come out for us. I would have loved to have seen both, and now you've made me want to go back down there. Damn it. No, but I did get to see a lot of species. Two of which are upcoming creature features, at
Nice.
least within the next 12 months. So that was cool.
Keeping it nice and vague, though, within the
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, I could tell you one because, but I'm not going to. But yeah, I'll put up some photos and I'll label them behind us as we're talking now. But yeah, I got some really cool animals there. Unfortunately, the crocodile swamp, I think it's called.
Oh, is that closed?
That's closed
Yeah.
temporarily. I think they're trying to raise funds to reopen it.
Yeah.
Which was a real shame because, firstly, it's a fantastic part of the zoo. Secondly, crocodiles.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I'm pretty sure they had anacondas in there.
I think they had it was either rock pythons or
Retic.
retics or something.
I think it was retic. Yeah, it was retic.
No, not anaconda. But...
Not a yellow one. Yellow,
no,
I'm
I don't
pretty
think they
sure
did.
Yellow anaconda somewhere.
Oh well, if you work at Paynton Zoo and know better, tell us. Let us know.
Also, they advertise a Komodo dragon there as well.
Do they?
It was on one of the signs, but I didn't see it. So maybe it's just saying
I don't think they have a Komodo.
I don't remember them ever having a Komodo dragon. So that's another thing that people can
correct us on.
On, really. But yeah, I mean, one of the pictures that you'll see behind will be the crocodile lizard.
They're
which
nice.
Is really cool.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've seen one in the flesh. And it's got it's like a little lizard. Like it doesn't look much more than like an agamid or something, does it?
Yeah.
But it's got the osteoderms along the back that a crocodile has. It's very, very cool.
Awesome looking little thing.
Black rhino, panther chameleon, gorilla.
They've got a nice bug house as well.
Didn't get to go in there. By the time we got to the bug house, it was like 5 to 5. So the way I'd planned it, I'd kind of gone like, right, what are your? I said to my daughter and then to my partner, what is your must see?
Yeah.
What is your must see? And we got those two, kind of a mix of those two done, and then we did the ones that I wanted to see. I put myself last because I'm privileged enough to have worked in many zoos, so I like to make sure they get to see what they want to see first. Other than that, there's not been much wildlife. I did see what I think is a pipistrel bat.
Nice.
I'll put that up behind us as well. That was on Wollemi.
Oh wow!
Along the cliffs, we were walking along there on Sunday. And today, I managed to see a spider had caught a grasshopper in its web and was biting into that. So yeah, that and a massive caterpillar that I need to check what species it was in a bit, but yeah, massive caterpillar out the front door. So they're all cool things, but yeah. What about you?
Well, college-wise, we've got new enclosures coming in. So I can't wait to start. I've basically been given a bit of free rein on what fish we get. So
I think you should get the one that's part of our creature feature
I think there's a very good chance of that.
Strongly think, and I think that you should make all your students, when they have to do the aquarist course or whatever it will be, they must listen to this episode and they must appreciate this species.
I'll get them to appreciate it, definitely.
Yeah.
Just the other night, in fact, whilst you and I were playing online on a computer
we played Path of Titans.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, we were terrorizing
dragon slayers,
terrorizing people who'd brought dragons into a dinosaur game by playing as Quetzalcoatluses and just absolutely dog fighting them out of the sky. So dragons lose to Quetzalcoatlus.
Yeah, to be fair, the dragons can't breathe fire in this game,
Yeah,
so
still, it's a Quetzalcoatlus, you know. Anyway, that's not the point. Before you appeared online, I turned my computer on. The room was quite dark. Came in, sat down, and I felt something crawl over my hand, and I just sort of went like that. Realized that as it sort of raised into the light of the monitor, there's a spider, like a house spider, just crawled onto my hand, and I just sort of looked at him. He looked at me, and he just went, and zoomed off to the side of my.
Realized what he'd done.
Yes. Oh my God! What? Oh my God! It's a human. And
Mistakes were made.
Raced off the side of the computer. Like,
He's behind your computer going, oh,
yeah,
got human all over me.
It's been a very, I'd say, invertebrate heavy actually week. I failed to mention the week before. For the first time in a very long time, I got stung by a wasp.
Oh yeah, I remember you
out
saying
in the garden. Just I didn't even realize I'd been stung by it. Just sort of cutting back some plants and everything, then just feel this weird pain, like just on my shoulder here. And I'm like, what on earth is that? You know, I must have caught something. And then it got worse. I was like, ow, that actually hurts. I came in, took my jumper off, and just sort of, you know, thinking there must be like a thorn or something in there. And this wasp falls out. I'm like, huh. That's the first time in years I think I've been stung by a wasp, which was an interesting experience. I haven't had that happen for a long time. You know, you always see those really irritating videos of people like purposely stinging themselves.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting to sort of feel the progression of like the pain and the venom and everything. I mean, it's only a wasp sting, but it was still interesting to feel it because you could feel a little bit of like definite irritation and it's sort of moving through you a little bit. So yeah, that was interesting. That and packed away the large sort of paddling pool we've had out in the garden all year. Or not all year, all summer.
End of summer.
And as I was lifting up the boards that had leveled the whole thing out in the garden, loads of insects and predatory beetles and all sorts. So it was a good like forage around to have a look what's hanging around there. So really big ground beetles as well, like, you know, big predatory ones. So I always like seeing those around the place. But yeah, been a mini beast week, I think, you know, a new tanks week.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Bred any witters yet?
Shut up. Although on the invertebrate note as well, I believe Phil Barber, friend of the podcast, has actually got some of those Simondoa cockroaches because he sent us a picture. Although he failed to mention whether it was his or not. I have asked him, but he just hasn't got back to me yet as to whether they were his or not. In which case, I'll be asking, you know, give us some, Phil, please, so I can. No, actually, no. I'm not gonna tell you because then if I don't breed them, I'll never live it down. Anyway, shall we move into the news?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's the news!
Every week, the weird and wonderful world of natural history offers up an embarrassment of riches when it comes to news and interesting stories.
And even though here at the Natural History Cupboard podcast, we are a small team, it is our aim to keep you, our fellow cupboard dwellers, up to date with the good, the odd, and the exciting.
So let's open up the Natural History Cupboard newsreel, where we compiled some of the more interesting headlines, and dive in.
Right, well, first up this week, from ABC News again, I've got a population of one of Australia's rarest and most endangered marsupials is slowly recovering off Australia's southern coast, and that is on Middle Island. It's celebrating, or they are celebrating, the birth of a brand new Gilbert's potteroo, which is one of Australia's smallest and rarest marsupials.
Yeah, potteroo's cool. And from Live Science, we now know why tarantulas are hairy, to stop army ants from eating them alive. A team of researchers published a study in the August 6th edition of Journal of Natural History detailing interspecies relationships with tarantulas. Their efforts saw them observe predatory ants attempting to make a meal out of adult and juvenile tarantulas, and they fail on account of the protection offered by the spider's thick hair coverage, with researchers proposing that the stiff hairs may have evolved to prevent predators like ants from landing a bite or sting.
There's me thinking because they just look gorgeous.
Eight-legged hamster.
Maybe they're born with it. Maybe it's tarantula. So anyway, mine from SciTech Daily is all about the secret behind the changing colours of New Zealand's kakapo. You were the one who sent me this one, thinking it would be perfect for me, and you know what? It's kakapo, so it's perfect. Essentially, the genetic insights into the kakapo's survival has helped to understand the colour variations that have evolved and kept it safe from various different predators over the years. They analyzed the genome sequence of 168 individuals, representing nearly all the living kakapo at the time of sequencing, which is kind of depressing in itself. They identified two genetic variants that together explain the color variation of all kakapos they studied. Scanning electron microscopes showed that the green and olive feathers of the birds, otherwise known as moss chickens, reflect slightly different wavelengths of light because of the differences in microscopic structures. And they reckon that these actually appeared about 1.9 million years ago, coinciding with the evolution of two aerial predators, the Haast-eagle and the Eel's harrier, which would have been major predators of those birds. So basically, camouflage.
Interesting. And my next one comes to us from SciTech Daily, and this is one that I picked deliberately because it reminded me of some listener mail that we got from Andrew Bunting, one of our listeners, who asked us about Quetzalcoatlus, well, actually just pterosaurs and like the biomechanics of their flight.
And yes, they can take down dragons.
Yeah, specifically the Asdarchids, like Quetzalcoatlus, that are huge. He was wondering about how they fly, which I can tell you that having been on crutches rather recently, the biomechanics for achieving lift off of long front limbs like that is quite doable. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. This article is specifically for you. I hope you find it interesting. So go to SciTech Daily. The headline is "Soaring versus Flapping: Remarkable Fossils Unlock Flight Secrets of Giant Pterosaurs." Now, researchers looking to answer the ancient question of whether the largest pterosaurs could really fly have used incredibly rare examples of fossilized Asdarchid pterosaurs preserved in near perfect 3D.
Nice.
The study looked at already known to science Aramborgiana, Philadelphia, and new to science Inabtanin Alarabia. Sorry. The former, that is
Aramborgiana.
Aramborgiana displayed ridges spiraling along its humerus, similar to vultures and indicative of torsion protection adaptations made for soaring. The latter, Inabtanin Alarabia, on the other hand, displayed a crisscross support structure within the flight bones, indicative of modern birds that actively flap through their flight pattern. The study is really interesting, so I definitely think you should check it out, especially if you're into your pterosaurs. So, just if you're interested, Inabtanin Alarabia, the scientific name for that new Asdarchid pterosaur, it means grape dragon of the Arabian Peninsula.
Grape dragon.
Yeah, because dragons are well known for eating grapes whilst they sit on their piles of gold. And
it's also not somewhere I think of as being a particularly grape growing area is the Arabian Peninsula. Anyway, moving on to Sci News, I've got paleontologists identify 3 new species of fossil thylacines. Paleontologists have from the University of New South Wales have unearthed the fossilized remains of 3 new species of thylacinid. They've included the genera Adjicinctus, Nimbacinus, and Nagamalacinus. I've probably butchered all of those. Today is not the day for me to pronounce words. all from the upper Oligocene deposits in the Riversley Formation, which is northwestern Queensland, which in itself just keeps bringing out, amazing fossils. First one of those, Badgercinus timfaulkneri, is basically thought to be a bone-crushing specimen that would have been somewhere around 7 to 11 kilos, about the same size as a large Tasmanian devil. So probably filling in a very similar ecological niche. So 3 new, very cool Australian marsupials.
I like the paleo art that came with that one.
Yeah, they always given quite good paleo art, I think, for a lot of these.
Okay, and my last entry into the newsreel this week comes to us from Earth.com. And the headline is Tiny Triceratops Relative Shakes Up Dinosaur Migration Theories. Now, by now, you will probably no doubt have heard about a new species of early ceratopsian being discovered in Japan. That's really exciting enough, to be honest. But the real prize of the find is the impact this has had on our understanding of ceratopsian out of Asia migration theories. So essentially, if you're listening to us from your home in the Americas and your favorite dinosaurs are things like Triceratops, Medusaceratops, Lokiceratops, Pentaceratops, Styracosaurus, and any of their other various frilled, spiky American relatives, then this discovery is for you. Sasayama magnamus segusii, an early Cretaceous Neoceratopsian, was more derived than the basal Psittacosaurids, but not quite as advanced, or rather not quite the advancement that later ceratopsians, like the ones I listed before, would become, suggesting that this new species pushes the date of the out of Asia migration to around 110 million years ago across the Bering Land Bridge during the mid-Cretaceous.
Wow, that's quite a
It's a
shift.
bit of a jump, isn't it?
Well, that and the amount of evolution that takes place in that period of all of the different ceratopsids in North America.
The diversity just explodes.
Yeah.
And that just about wraps it up for this week's installment of the Natural History Cupboard Newsreel. Guys, if you have articles or topics of interest at home that you're interested in and want us to look into, send them on in. You can send them via a myriad of ways, a plethora of ways, or even a ceratopsian diversity of ways, that many of them. But head on over to our social media accounts, our email, or send the extinct species of Phylocenid over through time to us, and we'll get to them, and you'll hear them either spoken about in the newsreel or perhaps a little bit more in depth in the main topic article, and that is this week with Gareth.
So yes, this week is an interesting week because, well, this month actually marks the 30-year anniversary of the finding of one of the most influential trees, I think, on the planet. Certainly one that is very influential to me because I absolutely love it. And as you might be able to guess, we've even covered it before. So this might give you an idea as to what species of tree I'm talking about. It is the Wollemi pine, the species of tree that I've, I would say, rather obsessed over a little bit. But basically, 30 years ago in September is when the Wollemi pine was rediscovered after its long dormancy to known science, shall we say. And in that 30-year period, the article that I've taken this from, you actually sent to me, and I misinterpreted what the article was about.
Right.
Just from the title. So it comes from geographical.com, .co.uk, sorry. And it says dinosaur, always has to have dinosaur in the term, because no one else could understand that it's an old tree species. Wollemi pines thriving in Sussex 30 years after their discovery. So I initially thought you meant that somebody had somehow lost a grove of Wollemi pines they'd planted 30 years ago, and they've just been rediscovered, which just did not seem possible or credible. So looking at it, I then realized, oh, okay, they are thriving in Sussex, along with a variety of other places around the country. You will find Wollemi pines because it has been 30 years since their initial discovery, and that long slog of trying to get these trees into captive, I suppose,
Captive breeding.
It is basically that, but you don't have to put as many fences around them, mostly to keep people from touching them, as to stop them from escaping. But Wollemi pines have become such a popular ornamental and specimen species of tree that they have taken off everywhere. In botanical gardens all around the world, you'll find Wollemi pines. In zoos now, there are an awful lot of them. In fact, Chester Zoo has got tons of them in one area around the sort of Australasia, Papua New Guinea bit. They're just Wollemi pines everywhere. The zoo that both of us worked at, we had at least two, and there was a third, I believe, that was sprouting off that one. So those were ones that were planted in the time that both you and I were there, and grew to at least, I mean, the largest one was easily over 15, 16 feet high, almost 20 foot, I think.
Yeah.
Probably even taller now if it's survived. That's my own thought. But there are Wollemi pines in zoos. There are Wollemi pines in botanical gardens. You can buy them, as I've got one in my garden as well. They are not a hard thing to get your hands on nowadays, but that is because of the dedication and work that those researchers took to basically, like the Simondoa cockroach, preserving some of the wild specimens, taking them into captivity, and getting them out into as many different places as possible after they'd cracked the way of breeding them or propagating them in the case of Wollemi pines, and then making them survive extinction if that happens in that that valley where they are kept secret. So basically, it means that it's a real success story. It's a 30-year anniversary of an absolutely amazing plant, an absolutely amazing tree that makes us rethink how we look at species, and also the protection that needs to be afforded through climate change as well. Because if you remember a couple of years back, we reported on the fact that there were bushfires raging in that part of Australia, which are becoming far too common an occurrence these days. And they actually set up irrigation systems around that valley to stop it from being burnt to the ground, and it seemed to work. I think there was only like 2 trees lost out of the entire thing.
Yeah, that's
a
right.
very, very low number of plants were lost from stuff going in there, and there were people in there right up to the very last minute protecting them before they would have obviously had to get out for their own safety.
Yeah.
So yes, I would highly recommend going back and listening to one of my favorite episodes, the Wollemi pine. It is just a stunning species. If you've got the space in your garden and want to plant a real living fossil, although that term is not really as acceptable, I would highly recommend getting one. They're a little expensive, but they're a species that people are going to go, what on earth is that? And you can tell them all about Wollemi pines. There are plenty of really good books about Wollemi pines now, and generally they're just a really impressive species. So
they are.
I
they
mean,
are a nice
not so
tree.
much a news article in anything that's particularly happened, but it is the 30th anniversary of the Wollemi's rediscovery.
Some news is just the news of celebration.
Yeah, so there you go. Like I say, go and finish this episode, then go and listen to the Wollemi pine one.
What we'll try and do, I'll try and, because you're editing the news this week, so I'll try
link
and
it in
jog your
there.
memory to link it.
Yeah, well, I'll link it in there anyway. Link in the description, as they always say. So, shall we head into this week's creature feature?
Let's do it.
It's the creature feature.
Right, well, we're into this week's creature feature. Aaron, it's your turn. What are we looking at?
Well, I'm going to get to talk a little bit about one of my favorite kind of animals that you can find potentially in your own home. It might have been one of the first species that I'd ever looked after. I certainly remember my parents teaching me how to do water changes with them and stuff.
Cool.
But this week, cupboard dwellers, if you'll humour me, that is, I'd like to talk about what I think might be my favourite tiny tropical fish, potentially my favourite fish above any shark.
Okay.
And I do,
That's
how
a
much I
bold
love
claim.
sharks.
Yeah.
You know how much I love sharks. But yeah, these are just super cool. Super cool. the tetra, or more specifically, for the sake of our creature feature, the neon tetra.
A very pretty little fish.
A
Yeah.
very, very pretty little fish. A fish that is equal amounts relaxing, equal amounts amusing to watch. I think very, very nice, a very nice fish. And no doubt you probably will have seen this fish
Easily, yeah.
if you've been in pet shops, you would have seen them. If you have a fish tank at home, you probably have them. Also, any zoo or aquarium, definitely most aquariums.
Yeah.
But any zoo that has aquariums will probably have a tank with neon tetras. Not all the time, but it is a widely held species for sure. Now, I know this isn't your typical creature feature, particularly not from me. It's not kind of really the type of animal that I highlight, really. And in terms
Nothing
of
wrong
it
with that.
being a pet, I think it's only been what, corn snakes, raw pythons, and
Bearded dragon.
bearded dragon, gerbil.
Yeah.
So we have actually done a few
We've even
species
covered
that find
European
themselves as
rabbit as
pets.
well.
We have done, that's true. Yeah, okay. But even so, for the moment, if you can, try and forget about the magnificent megafauna, the threatening theropods, and the vicious venoms that we so often wax lyrically about.
Yeah, but you know I like the small stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. And this is one small animal that I think definitely deserves to be liked.
true.
I had this conversation with with a zookeeper, fellow zookeeper, the other day because in preparation for this podcast episode, I wanted to see if I could get you guys some nice footage, and unfortunately, I've not been able to get as much as I would have hoped for.
Yeah.
However, when I posted up about it, I posted this is a post up that said basically how wonderful the animal is and how I want to highlight it and talk a little bit about the history of the neon tetra. And one zookeeper really was keen, like really uh made his day, I suppose.
Well,
So
potential new listener and potential
maybe I will link the episode to it
uh,
when
if
we're
you're
done
watching
editing it.
this, you're very or we're very grateful for the stuff you've provided.
Yeah, for the keeper that provided me with some video footage that you'll probably see throughout this creature feature. Thank you very much. And for the keeper that was really sold on the fact that we're doing a special episode on Neon Tetra, I hope it lives up to your standards. But yeah, let me guide you into the often relaxing, sometimes humorous world of these beautiful little fish. Firstly, I think a quick word on tetras generally would be in order. So Gareth, can you tell me what a tetra is?
It's hang on. They're a South American species, and they're found in the Charchinidae family, which is the same group that has piranha and silver dollar, and then tetras are a very small part of that. I think they're mostly the smaller end of fish. I don't know of many big tetras.
Yeah, so you've done all right. But I think not 100% on this actually. I might have to go back and have a look at this and put it in like the show notes. But I think Piranha got moved out of the Tetra.
Oh,
Yeah.
blooming typical.
But yeah, Tetra is actually now more of a layman's term
Of course,
than
yeah.
it was. So Tetra used to actually mean something. Nowadays it
Used to
doesn't
mean
mean
something,
it used to
man.
mean something to be a Tetra. Now it doesn't really mean much at all. It's largely fallen out of use in scientific circles, in terms of like, classification and that of species and families, because basically the species and families involved have become much more refined as
Well,
time's gone on.
it's like taxonomically, there's no such thing as a fish, and the more we look into
Yeah,
fish families, the more spread
this
apart
is
they
a
become.
very, very good example of this. Yeah, it's true. Nevertheless, it's still a term that is frequently used every day. I still use it, and I
Yeah.
don't ever see myself moving away from it.
No, no.
It's kind of the colloquial name, and as you said before, we had to do a take two of this.
Common parlance.
Common parlance, yeah. So the tetras, as well as some of the closely related species, such as neon tetras, because neon tetras are not a species of true tetra as such. They can all be found gathered in a family known as Characidae, which is a species. Sorry, that family is a member of the ray-finned fish. So this is a family of freshwater fish from tropical or subtropical climes. They are typically small, as you could probably guess by looking at things like neon tetra or the very similar looking cardinal tetra and plenty of other tetra that you'll find. And they barely measure more than 3 centimeters most of the time. Now, the tetras can be identified by the addition of the adipose fin between the dorsal fin and the caudal fin. So the dorsal fin is the fin on the back of the spine, famous with dolphins and sharks and ichthyosaurs. And then the caudal fins, of course, are on the tail. And they can be found in a plethora of habitats across Central and South America and Africa. And just a ballpark estimate, can you tell me how many species of tetra there are?
Oh God, it's gonna be hundreds.
Cover of the notes.
I can't see that from here. I'm gonna say somewhere around 800.
800. Okay, so
that's probably way too high, actually.
Well, as of right now, though this subject is kind of well, this question, the answer to this question is subject to continued debate and continued reclassification.
I'm gonna go for like 300. Actually, I'm bringing it down.
300.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll remember 800 and 300. It's subject to constant change. Which is basically the staple of this family, the Characidae, their entire existence, really. But right now we're talking about 18 families, roughly 270 genera, and more than 1,674 species.
Oh, I was close at the beginning.
Closer with 800.
I knew that
it's still like half that amount away.
It is one of the biggest like freshwater fish families around.
It's a huge family, yeah. So neon tetras, they belong to a huge family that experiences ever-changing allegiances. But what about the bright little species itself? So the neon tetra grows no larger than 4 centimeters, and that is a big neon tetra. They don't tend to get that long. For those of you living in the States, that's 1.5 inches. They really don't tend to get that big, really. And the fish is stunningly colored, with a silver white kind of body with dual flashes up their flanks of iridescent blue and bright red, owed to the guanine crystals that are inside their scales that appear to flash as light catches them, and as light around them changes too, as we'll come on to. In fact, the actual, may as well talk about it now, the actual brightness of the color and those flashes, it's actually done to suit their location. So whether they're in clear water or black water, now they prefer black water, but they are found frequently in clear water. Time, so day or night, they'll actually actively change the brightness or dullness of the colors for camouflage. And their intent, whether they're looking to compete or to breed. And this ability to change color is founded in 2 traits: the abilities of causing optical interference and chromatophore absorption. So that's how they change the colors. If you could sit, I'm trying to work out how to word this in proper English here, but if you could sit a black water tank, so a tank that has been allowed to absorb tannin, the water's been allowed to absorb tannins from bogwoods and stuff like that, and then a clear water tank, what you'll find first and foremost is that neon tetras look equally beautiful in either.
Yep.
But if you have a look, you'll start to see the behavioral differences that they'll display or demonstrate according to the environment that they're in and the colors that they show. And we'll get into more of that color behavior in a minute, because I want to talk briefly about their history as best as I can alongside their life biology in a way. So it actually has a fascinating history. When you see neons in the pet store, you just think, and I suppose the layman would also think so, looking at them in a zoo or an aquarium.
Probably.
But you just think bog standard, entrance level, beginner pet fish. which really is not fair.
Doesn't do them justice.
Not at all. It has a fascinating history of interaction with humans, being discovered somewhat by accident, in fact, completely by accident. And that was in the 1930s. So during the 1930s, when this all came about, an adventurer by the name of August, I can murder his surname, sorry, August Rabaut, I think it's Rabaut, August Rabaut, made the arduous and dangerous journey to Iquitos, which is in Peru. It's a place pretty
deepest, darkest Peru.
Deepest, darkest, in fact, yes, deepest, darkest Peru, because at the time it was literally untouched by anyone looking for ornamental fish. And such. And neon in this area, neon tetras can be found in a wide range, not just in Peru. So they can be found in a wide range of the Amazon basin, from eastern Peru, eastern deepest, darkest Peru, to western Brazil and southeastern Colombia. Here they inhabit balmy waters of about 20 to 28 degrees Celsius. That's 68 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit for our American friends. Where its preference for acidic black water has it most frequently found in such streams. Though it does still inhabit clear water, as I said earlier. The tendency to prefer black water may actually be the trigger for the evolution of the bright colors. Because
makes sense.
Yeah. But basically, it's a trait that is used to remain visible and communicate with the rest of your conspecifics, because they shoal together amongst the vegetation and the shelter provided in their habitat, because they are a social species. But Auguste wasn't in Iquitos for these fish. He was actually there to collect and document butterflies.
Yeah, same thing, basically.
Which obviously live in Amazonian waters. But yeah, he was there to collect and document butterflies when his native guide decided to point out the brightly coloured fish, because I see the similarity. The fish is beautiful, the butterfly are beautiful. If you're interested in that, you might be interested in this.
Was he using a butterfly gun?
I've got no idea. I didn't see that.
It was an actual gun made by people to collect butterflies.
What, fire a net?
Like a giant shotgun. No, that had like a very small, like, shot to it, and it was meant to just penetrate the butterfly's wing to get them to fall out of the sky.
Well, humans have they know no end to their cruelty, do they?
We're good at shooting things, I'll say that much.
So yeah, this guide basically pointed out the brightly coloured species that so many of us enjoy in our home aquariums. That was in the 1930s, in Peru, in areas where ornamental fish keepers and such had never been. And August smelled an opportunity, a crisp opportunity for cash flow. So he managed to ship 13 live specimens from Peru back to Paris, where they were taken on by a Mr. J.S. Neal, who sold them on to Hugo Schnell and Walter Grime, or Grimm, from Hamburg, Germany. The fish, dubbed the neon fish, were sold for, guess how much?
Oh, wait, this would be in German marks.
No, we'll do. I've got it in American dollars.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna, like, modern day equivalent. Are we talking?
No, it's the price at the time.
I'm gonna say, let's go $1,000.
You went higher than I thought you were going to, but it was $6,500.
Oof.
Which in today's money is not worth thinking about. So yeah, he sold them to these two German chaps, and in 1936, 5 specimens were shipped back to the Americas. This time to Chicago.
Yeah.
Via the impressive means of the Hindenburg. Which is what Gareth put me onto last week after we'd recorded, and we were talking about neon tetras kind of informally.
It's been stuck in my head as I'm fairly certain that is an actual fact.
Yes.
And
I'm going to come on to how in a minute.
And I just thought, I'm sure that's in there. I'm sure he'll have looked at that. But it's so obscure that
I was going to go down a strictly life biology route And it would have been a bit of a. I don't think I would have done the Neon Tetra justice doing that, because it felt like a bit of a data dump. But when you put me onto the Hindenburg and I started looking into the Hindenburg and stuff like that, it opened up a whole world
Was it
of interest.
Was it the fish that took the Hindenburg down?
It was not. Funnily enough, though, it was a year later.
Yeah, well,
I think it was
they
a
obviously
year.
weren't on that
It
one.
might have been a year to a day.
Oof.
So yeah, the fish definitely were the omens, but they weren't the culprits. So yeah, now for the historians amongst you familiar with the Hindenburg, or more familiar with the Hindenburg than I was, you may be thinking, hang on, live animals were prohibited on the Hindenburg.
Were they?
Yes, they were at the
Ah.
time that that they flew. Yes, and right you are. So the recipients of the fish had a cunning plan. So they'd arranged for these fish to be smuggled in tin cans, and labeled as fish preservative. So pickled fish, which of course 4 of them pretty much ended up as, because only one of them arrived alive. And to make matters more interesting, as I said, about a year later, the Hindenburg crashed. But that flight with those 5 neon tetras on it, that only one survived off of, is technically to this day the most expensive animal transit ever pulled off.
Is it? Because I would surely think that people have smuggled far more endangered species.
Yeah, but we're talking about, I suppose, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Basically, animal smuggling.
But I think it's proportionate. So what you're talking about is $3,000 for one tiny little neon tetra.
Size-wise, I suppose.
So the proportion is
okay.
what we're
So
talking
you're going
about.
more bang for your buck. So if you'd have
I think
smuggled
so.
rhinos, yeah, it's cheap as chips.
Which, speaking of rhinos, Gareth, I think if you just checking something.
You just happen to have one off camera.
No, I was just checking something. The day that you guys are listening to this is World Rhino Day, I believe.
Ah.
It is. Yeah, so just because you mentioned it, it will be World Rhino Day when you listen to
World Rhino
this.
Day.
Yeah, happy World Rhino Day. I had to double check that. So yeah, it was all back to the Neon Tetra. It was also in 1936 that the Neon Tetra was finally named as such, because if you remember, I mentioned it was called the Neon Fish before. So yeah, it was named the Neon Tetra finally, and scientifically described by ichthyologist George Sprague Myers. Now his specimens actually came to him from the famous aquarist William Thornton Innes III, for whom the species would be named.
Oh.
Because that scientific name is Parachirodon inese. Let's see if you can work it out. It's actually a little bit. The only thing anticlimactic about the Neon Tetra is its scientific name.
Near Crest? No, go on.
So it just means In's Chirodon relative, or close relative of.
Oh, well, I got
Chirodon.
the para bit then.
Yeah. So Chirodon actually being the wider genus that the Neon Tetras belong to. So yeah, that's what their scientific name means. It is as a direct result of the discovery of Neon Tetras and the following boom in breeding and husbandry of the species that we have all the mainstream protocols and practices for keeping tropical fish that we have today. It's all come from the Neon Tetra, and obviously been adapted or evolved over time to keep it up to speed with what we're doing. But yeah, it all came from the Neon Tetra, from pathogen treatment and floor siphoning to partial water changes and monitoring of pH, nitrates, and temperature parameters. How you keep your tropical fish, whether you work in a zoo, an aquarium, or you have them at home, is owed to what those initial collectors and breeders experienced with their Neon Tetras.
And I'm guessing a lot of that was just pure guesswork.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Their natural habitat is loaded with tannins, shelter, darkness, and the perfect temperature and acidity levels to facilitate the species thriving. In such an environment, they can begin breeding at the age of 12 weeks. They are a diurnal omnivorous fish, hunting and foraging during the daylight hours and hiding away after dark to avoid being predated on themselves. And that's where that being able to consciously change your, like dull your colors comes into play. You can hide about much better where you're going to be sleeping if you dull those bright colors down. All being well, a good life for a neon tetra will see them enjoy a life of about 5 to 8 years. So it's not a bad
Yeah,
like
for a
innings
small
for a
fish
small
like
little
that.
fish. So yeah. Now, despite being somewhat predatory, they are an incredibly peaceful species. You can keep them; they will cohabit quite well in tanks with other fish species as they do in the wild too. And it's that tranquility accompanying the vivid coloration that has made them one of, if not the most popular aquarium fish in the world, I think. I think they're a wonderful species, as I've said from the top. One that is widely kept yet widely underappreciated. In fact, I think they're completely underrated and not awarded the credit and respect that they deserve. And I really do feel that people don't actually get how cool this fish is. If you have this in your tank, please understand that they were discovered by accident when someone was looking for butterflies. They were discovered by this butterfly collector having it pointed out to him by a native Amazonian guide. And everything that you do with every fish in your life in a tropical tank will be to do with neon tetras. Um, and they're just amazing. They're just so beautiful
Yeah, yeah.
and interesting to watch. They're, like I say, they're a beautiful species, and they'll lighten up and liven up your tank or any tank that you're viewing in a zoo, as much as they lighten and liven up the Amazon basin. They're both relaxing and amusing to observe, as I said before, and they aren't going to predate their cohabitants or their neighbors out in the wild. And you can really kind of, if you have them at home, really go to town with the bogwood
Yeah,
and
yeah.
kind of emulate those root systems that you find in the wild, because you're really going to find that your animal thrives in that kind of ecosystem. You give them plenty of opportunities to hide, and they'll feel so. And I've said this to so many zoo directors as well. If your animal has ample opportunity to hide, they won't hide because they
Yeah, they feel
feel
safe.
comfort. They have options to hide. So yeah, offer them shelter and vibrant plant life whilst contrasting these beautiful colors with a darker tannin containing water to really create the perfect home for a perfect window into the wild and how these guys live in the wild. So that is all I'm gonna say on neon tetras right now, because I could go on for quite a long time and it was very difficult. It was one of those where it started off as a data dump and then I found something, and like a dog with a bone, like I had a lot of fun with this one,
Yeah,
and there was so much more to say, particularly life biology, because I kind of leant more towards the history.
I think it works
Um,
just as well.
yeah, I just think if you've got them, appreciate them because they are beautiful. And I have to say, like I keep in and ahhing about like just having a, not a small tank, but like
An aquarium.
a smallish aquarium
Yeah,
with just some neon tetra in there.
they do look good in a big shoal.
Yes, yeah,
The bigger the shoal, the better, really, with them in
mm,
proportion to the tank size, I suppose. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I could go on, but I think you have to cut off at some point because otherwise the whole episode goes on way too long.
Mm. I've got two things that I wanted to add to Neon Tetris. So one of the uh lessons that I teach on like fish keeping and not
Hmm.
aquaculture as such, because aquaculture is more the agricultural side of it. But talking about sourcing of fish
Yeah,
in aquariums, OATA, which is the Ornamental Association of Ornamental Aquarist Trade Association.
yeah,
They have some really good videos on their website that come up, and there's a fantastic one about sustainably sourced wild neon tetras, and it's these families that basically have done this their entire lives. They go out with these tiny little sort of nets that are like that sort of size, more like
that's
a
right. Yeah.
shirt just between two poles, and they sieve through incredibly shallow water that is just littered with leaf litter and everything, and
Hmm.
it's right in the middle of the forest. And yeah, they're just sifting through and then catching out one or two tetras to then sell, and then take them off to, a wholesaler, whoever sells them on then. Not so much of a thing that happens in the UK because most of them are captive bred.
Yes, they are.
But certainly still in parts of America, they are still shipped from the Amazon straight out, not on blimp anymore.
No.
The other one is one of the best Tetra tanks that I've ever seen is at Chester Zoo. No surprise there. Their sloth exhibit in the Jaguar house has this massive curved piece of glass, curved piece of acrylic that is just basically like a nice looking into a massive aquarium of Amazonian fish. It's under the depth of like a human, like you're standing at your head is at the water line, but there's massive shoals of Tetra in there. So where everyone is staring up at the sloth, I'm usually looking at the shoal of Tetra.
Yeah, I've been there. I remember that complex quite well because I remember thinking that I really like the Jaguar enclosure. And then just by accident seeing the neon Tetra, and it's so nice when areas of zoos are themed to like there's still to this day there's too many zoos, including good zoos, that have their collection very randomly, sporadically placed around. It's so I'm a big proponent, a big advocate for mixed exhibits where it's suitable and it's safe, and for theming. And I love nothing more. This is one of my complaints about British zoos as opposed to European and even some American zoos is when you go to zoos like let's pick one off the top of my head, Loro Park. When you're looking at the animal inside the enclosure, you almost feel like you've been pulled into Africa or into South America. Like it's themed as such that you're fully immersed in that world. It's a real window into that habitat. Whereas in Britain, I think I've said this before on the podcast, I love British zoos. I do. I think we have some of the best zoos in the world. Quite frankly, especially in terms of standards. There are some bad zoos as well, but yet the one thing that I do bemoan is the lack of theming. I know we don't have the habitat, the climate, to
you don't
emulate
necessarily
the plants,
need that.
but you can do other bits to theme it. I think when I see African lions on a field of lush green grass, I don't. It just but yeah, I mean, seeing the neon Tetra next to a Jaguar enclosure was, and I like sloths. I know everybody adores them, but I'm not really like pulled to sloths.
No.
Jaguars and neon Tetras all day.
That, and in that same building, they've also got Lake Titicaca frogs, which I was straight there looking at those.
We need to go to Chester Zoo.
I think we do.
Yeah.
Let's move on into the email, shall we?
Let's do it.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right, well, we're into this week's emails. We're going to start things off with our question from last week, which was, what's your favourite sign that the season is changing? We've had a few comments on a few different places, actually, which is nice to see. Aaron, you're starting us off?
Yeah, starting us off with a message from Becky Carter, who says, the chill in the air, morning mists and berries in the hedgerow. And then in brackets, also the roads and fells in the lakes being quieter. Which...
all the tourists go home.
Yeah.
It's definitely a sign around here as well.
Yeah, we can definitely relate.
Jess has put starlings, field fares, and red wings.
Just our very own social or Twitter manager.
Yeah.
So just to throw that out there. Shelley Kendall says the trees showing how beautiful it can be to let go of something. That's
very
deep.
metaphorical.
That's deep. That's profound.
My other half was my husband complaining it's too cold and wet and that summer is over. Yeah, all right. I know that I complain that summer is over. Drew has then chimed in on this.
Drew, our own artist.
Yeah, he's digging the knife in, saying Gareth wearing jumpers again. Oh wait, He never takes them off. So that would make no sense to anyone. A, because this is an audio format most of the time, and B, whenever I have appeared on camera, I'm in a t-shirt.
If I could offer,
You can.
I'm going to offer
you
two
can
bits of
interject.
context to Drew's comment and Gareth's rebuttal here. Drew's comment. Bear in mind, like when we first started this podcast, we had we used to have our lunches together, but when we first started this podcast, it was in the middle of COVID. Oh, it's at the start of COVID, actually.
I think it was, yeah.
Roughly the start of COVID, and we were all eating separately. Now, I was in the cupboard, this
The
green
original
room.
room, yeah.
Above me was another cupboard that was green again, but it was rammed full of all these like exotic herpetology tanks. It was his back room, basically.
It was the breeding room for all of the
Yeah.
inverts and
Yeah,
things.
there was reptiles, amphibians, invertebrates. And at one point, wasn't there a lorikeet in there as well, I think?
Yeah, when one of them
was a bit
one of them was ill.
unwell. It was a bit of
Yeah.
a hospital room and stuff. Anyway, that room was baking hot, and he still didn't take his t-shirt off.
No, jumper. T-shirt
Jumper,
would
yeah,
have been a
sorry.
bit weird.
Yeah. He still didn't take his jumper off. Now, imagine, if you will, how hot the studio must be with the machines running and the boiler working to actually get this bloke to not wear a podcast hoodie and
I don't have a podcast today.
What I mean is, like, you actually opted for a podcast t-shirt.
This is true, but I figure this is more versatile than, I've got my jumpers down here.
I think we've said it before. Like, you can see when we're recording these videos. If you listen only to the audio format, take it from us. If on YouTube we look quite red, and it's because it's quite warm in this room.
It's not too bad at the moment. It's lovely.
No, it's all right at the moment. But I think that's because it's so cold outside now that it's kind of balanced out.
But yes, I am known for liking it warmer than most. I am very much a reptile.
You're the human reptile, yeah. So the next comment comes to us from Jen Babs, who's one of our Patreon supporters. And she says, all of the above and the smell. See a tree at work. She's posted up a picture of a tree that we'll put behind us.
I think it's a lovely, it looks like an acer of some sort, or some sort of maple.
It's bright red.
Yeah, it's very red. It's very much that sort of almost American fall, there's a lot more trees that change a lot more dramatic color.
Yeah.
Whereas I always feel that British
North
trees
America
are a bit...
and Canada do autumn properly.
Yeah.
But I mean, British trees don't have a chance because we don't have proper seasons here.
No,
We just have it
goes from the wet to cold.
We got winter and cold monsoon. That's our two seasons. It's like 8 weeks worth of days sporadically placed where we actually get sunlight.
This is true. Yeah.
That's why we both are pale. Look like vampires.
So Pete Watts has I put on my warm sandals. He's a relation of yours who never wears anything other than sandals.
I can't remember a time where I've seen my Uncle Pete not wearing sandals and shorts.
Fair enough.
Even on the cold days, which Kelsey Watts hasn't followed up with. Saying I was going to say you wear your trousers, but I'm not sure that's true. I think he wears sandals, shorts, and a jumper.
There's always someone like that just continuously wears very little, even in the most ridiculous of weather.
Yes. There was one other comment that we found, because we put this on Instagram for the first time and no one answered on Instagram, probably because we haven't put them out before, so people aren't used to answering the questions there. However, on YouTube, one of our newer viewers, actually, Renington, has replied in the comment section, and they've said, favorite sign the seasons are changing? Easy. All the tourists leaving.
I mean, I think that's the number one thing. If you live anywhere whether it's a tourist hotspot, it's all of a sudden becomes a lot quieter and a lot easier to move around. It's glorious.
Wollemi becomes a ghost town.
It becomes an actual beach again.
It does, yeah, that's true.
You can actually go there and not have to fight your way through people walking into the surf with the most ridiculous attempts at anything to do with the sea before they get inevitably swept out and the RNLI's got to go and rescue them. You know, sitting out there on a inflatable flamingo,
I have actually
half the
seen,
way to Ireland
have
because
seen
the
people
tide's
doing that.
taken them. Going, oh, I didn't realise. Anyway,
I thought the red flag means go.
yeah. No one said it wasn't a flamingo that couldn't go out to sea. So that was last week's questions. This week's question, based on your creature feature this week, this week's question is going to be: what is your favorite aquarium fish species? They're going to be easily some good answers for this because
Yeah.
a lot of you may even have some of these as pets. I'm now looking at getting ready to stock some new aquariums at the college. I've showed you one of the species that I want to get, called a chaka chaka,
Chaka, yeah.
or just a chaka, which is otherwise known as a frogmouth catfish.
Mhm.
But I'm quite partial to a bircher.
Yes, you
which
are.
We've done
Yeah,
before.
Yeah, link
There's
that one too.
there are so many species of fish I'd quite happily have in aquariums if I had the space, the money, and the inclination to do so. But it's an awful lot of time invested in that.
So we're talking tropical fish, aren't we? Because it was
Yeah, I mean,
Tetra.
you
So
could
we
have
pick
cold water fish if you want. I really like sticklebacks.
sticklebacks, yeah. So I'm gonna stick with warm kind of tropical fish. So I think it's pretty obvious after creature feature that number one for me is neon tetra, and if I could have a small, like smallish, not small, but a small kind of tank, I'd deck it out with all the root systems, and I'd have like a shoal of neon tetra for sure.
Nice.
But a few close seconds, I remember very vividly that in my tank with my neon tetras, I had silver shark.
Yeah.
And I do like them. It's another tropical fish that people have in their homes and don't really think much of. I think they're very beautiful. But I should definitely say that I think a close joint second behind neon tetra, but after. Sorry, no. How do I word that? So
A joint second
just after Neon Tetra in joint second place before we get to the Silver Sharks would either be betters or what I call Siamese fighting fish, which I've bred before with quite a bit of success. I quite like them, and even. Oh, maybe even more so. It might not be joint second. We're gonna say joint second before I start having an internal argument with
third
myself.
joint second, yeah.
But it's got to be either the betters or the red tail black sharks,
Okay.
which I've also bred. I just think they are cool, but both of those species are quite contentious with cohabitants. You have to be very careful what you put them in with. In fact, male betters, you may as well not put them in with anything unless you are going to house them with female betters. They can be. I've seen them work, and I've had them work with other species, but I wouldn't advise it for someone who's just going into it.
There's so many fish that you could add to this list of like ones. So I've come across some really amazing ones of late called blue hillstream trout.
Yeah.
American shiners. They're an absolutely beautiful looking fish from above. Gara rufia, the doctor fish, the ones that do your feet. So yeah, there's like the alligator gars.
Yeah.
I just like I say, I'd have an entire aquarium if I had the space. So
Yeah.
well, let us know what your favorite aquarium species is. You could put saltwater fish. In fact, we didn't even touch on saltwater fish as some of those there. Although I personally think freshwater tropical fish are just as interesting as marine tropical. So you can send us your thoughts as to what your favorite aquarium fish is on our Facebook page, where that goes up every week, as well as on our YouTube page. You can do that in the comments down below, or you can on our Instagram page as well, where we'll basically keep an eye out, see if anyone sees that. But that is just one of the many ways that you can get in contact with us. You can also send us an email at thenathistorykupboard@gmail.com. You can also get in contact with us, as these wonderful people have, by becoming a Patreon.
That's right. So every week we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters. Now, these are the people who have been kind enough to support us on a financial level, and to be quite honest, we're grateful beyond words. But those people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Chelsea McKee, Connie P, Nick to Nick, and Justin Knife. Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us here in the cupboard to improve things. You saw last week the drone, which we're looking to do
Which you
something
did.
with.
You did a
hopefully
little
this
bit
week.
of. I was impressed with the filming of that you did.
Oh yeah, I had a little play. I don't think I'll put it up this because
No,
it's
no,
off
no.
my van, so it's not really relevant.
But I
But
was
it's
impressed that you were able to like
I managed to
navigate it.
fly it through the side door and then out through the back door and then round and up and
Yeah.
then fly it back over the roof of the van and then back down to me.
Well, all going well, we'll get out this weekend and we'll get some drone footage of different parts of around Devon, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's one of the many examples that we could probably give, including the fact that we actually do this as a YouTube channel now, not solely in audio format. Now, we appreciate everybody who listens, all of our cupboard dwellers who listen to us and like and subscribe and share us out. And if you could just help us out a little bit extra by putting down a little review for us on whichever format you're watching or listening to us on. But yeah, we really can't thank you guys enough for everything.
Yeah, massive thank you from both of us. Like Aaron was saying, you can help us out in a variety of other ways. It doesn't have to be Patreon because money isn't everything. You can help us out in the easiest of ways by just watching or listening to this episode, telling a friend, and letting people know about an amazing podcast about one of your favorite little fish. You know, everyone knows someone who's kept fish at some point,
Yeah,
so
on that
let
note,
everyone know.
when answering that question, please send photos in.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
send
Show
some
us,
photos.
show us your tetras, or your aquarium fish. So yeah, just by interacting with us as well on any of the social media and also on our YouTube page, it does a massive amount as well. And liking, reviewing, leaving any sort of comment really does a huge amount for the algorithm, and pushes us up there and lets people know that we exist. In fact, to that note, you've got someone who's interacted with us as well.
Yeah, I wanted to read this one out. I will respond to it, but I wanted to read this one out. It's actually on the A Unicorn of the Sea episode, so 2 episodes ago. And this one comes to us from Spencer Matthew Seams, who writes, "Roadside zoos creep me out. They there are probably some good, in inverted commas, ones, but they always make me deeply uncomfortable. Near me, in mid-Atlantic USA, there is a kangaroo breeder, among other exotic animal farms. And the people that I know of who get these animals just collect them and get rid of them if they aren't cuddly enough." And yeah, I think that's because at some point on the episode, although I can't remember specifically what the context of this was, but I mentioned about, or I alluded to the fact that I don't like roadside zoos.
I don't think it's a good idea at all in those. But
no. And if you don't know what roadside zoo is, think what's his name,
Circus.
Joe Exotic, or Static Circus.
Yeah.
Semi-permanent or permanent circuses. Not good places. The type of places where you can go and play with otters in a swimming pool, or go cuddle a jaguar or something like that. Ridiculous things like that are more about show and exhibition than they are about education, research, and conservation.
Yeah.
I don't really think I need to, or we need to belabor the point, but yeah, roadside zoos. I'm sure, as Spencer alludes, there might be some good ones somewhere, but generally speaking,
not a great idea.
Not a great idea, and usually have really malpractice. In fact, it was a roadside zoo. Do you remember that guy let all the big cats out and then shot himself?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I'm not going to say it's standard, but that's not surprising, shall we say?
No, disturbing, but not surprising.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right. Well, yeah, like I say, get in contact with how much you dislike roadside zoos. I mean, yeah.
Or if you've been to a good one.
Or if you've been to a good one. I don't think we'll have too many people saying that, but
think
you
so.
know. But that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode. So big thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
It's been an interesting one. It's always nice to hear about a nice little aquarium fish.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank you for letting me go on about neon tetras.
Well, don't thank me, you wrote it. And a big thank you to you at home for listening. And we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Bye. One does not simply smuggle a fish back into America unless it's done on a blimp destined to explode a year later.
The Tetras did it.